It is 100 years since the end of one of the most significant wars in modern history, World War I. It became known as the Great War because it affected people all over the world and was the biggest war anyone had ever known. It even came to be known as the war to end all wars, as no conflict before World War I had caused destruction on this scale before. People wanted to believe that nobody would ever want to go to war again after it. Here's some of the most interesting facts about World War I that we all should know. 1. The First World War was the first of its scale. Humans have had countless clashes in history, but there had never been one to involve these many nations. By the war's end, over 30 countries had joined the conflict. 2. The war lasted 4 years, 3 months, and 2 weeks. Austria-Hungary began the war with Serbia 110 years ago on July 28, 1914. The signing of the armistice on November 11, 1918, ended the conflict. 3. It wasn't always called the First World War. Up until World War II, it was simply known as the World War or Great War. Ernst Haeckel, a German biologist and philosopher, was the first to call it the First World War. 4. The assassination of Austro-Hungarian royalty was the tipping point that started the war. Tensions were already high in Europe, but the last straw was a Serb assassinating the Austro-Hungarian heir, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, and thus, the war began. 5. The first attempt to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand failed. Serbian assassins first struck on the morning of June 28, 1914, by throwing a bomb at the Archduke's car. The bomb bounced off Ferdinand's car, though, and blew up one of the other cars in the motorcade. 6. The Austro-Hungarian Archduke was only successfully assassinated because his driver made a wrong turn. After the Archduke completed his business in Sarajevo, a slight change was made to his travel route. Unfortunately, the driver, who didn't understand German, missed this crucial information and took a wrong turn. This brought the car right in front of Gavrilo Princip, who fired 2 shots, killing the Archduke and his wife. 7. The war involved 2 opposing sides, the Central Powers and the Allies. The Central Powers included countries like Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. The Allies were France, Serbia, Italy, Russia, the United Kingdom, Japan, and the United States of America. 8. World War I brought 4 empires to ruin. These were the German, Russian, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian empires. As a result of the collapse, many independent republics were founded, including Austria, Estonia, Lithuania, and Turkey. 9. World War I is responsible for one of the highest number of casualties in the history of humanity. The First World War caused 9.7 million soldiers and 11 million civilians to die, with an additional 21 million people injured. The tragic reality is that the vast majority of the World War I casualties were because of war-related famine and disease. 10. This was the first war to take place across 3 dimensions. Historically, wars had been either fought at sea or on land in highly specialized formations. World War I changed everything, though, by introducing both trench and aerial warfare. 11. H. G. Wells called World War I the war to end all wars. English author H. G. Wells, who came up with the phrase, believed that crushing German soldiers in World War I would begin the end of all conflicts in Europe. As we know now, Wells couldn't have been more wrong. 12. Soldiers didn't even wear proper helmets at the outbreak of World War I. The best helmets that any troops were equipped with were made of leather, which was absolutely useless. It wasn't until a year later, after seeing the grave head injuries modern weapons caused, that France started issuing steel helmets to troops. 13. The British built the first armored tanks used in the First World War. Tanks were developed to help cross obstacles, carry supplies, and break through enemy lines. The first time a tank entered the battlefield was on September 15, 1916, at the Battle of the Somme. 14. German soldiers engineered the reversed bullet to penetrate British World War I armored vehicles successfully. Regular bullets were no match for the impregnable tanks and would disintegrate on impact. The German military fabricated the reversed bullet, which was essentially a bullet placed backward in the cartridge. The blunt end was less likely to break apart and could penetrate tanks if fired at close range. 15. The first army tanks used in the war had genders. British armored tanks were gendered based on the type of weapons they carried. Male tanks had cannons, while the females were mounted with machine guns on each side. 16. Making weapons used in World War I caused some British women and their babies to get yellow skin. Known as the Canary Girls, these women were responsible for making trinitrotoluene (TNT) weapons. The toxic chemicals used in the bomb factories caused them to develop liver damage and jaundice, which turned their skin yellow. Babies born to these women also had temporarily yellow skin that faded on its own with time. 17. American schools banned the German language during the First World War. Before the war, German was the second most popular language in the US. When the war began, it was seen as the enemy's language and was no longer taught in schools. 18. Popular items with German names were renamed in English during World War I. Hamburgers became Liberty sandwiches, and sauerkraut was renamed Liberty cabbage. Even German shepherds weren't spared. To this day, they're often referred to by their English name, Alsatian shepherds or simply Alsatians. 19. The British royal family ditched their German surname as World War I increased hostility towards Germany. Before the war, the British royal family had a German name, Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. But as anti-German sentiments grew, King George V changed the family name to Windsor, a truly proper English name. 20. The British Postal Service delivered 12 million letters each week to the World War I front lines. Most of these letters went to frontline soldiers and were crucial to boosting their morale. The Postal Service wasn't just one way, either. Soldiers could expect their replies to reach their loved ones within a matter of days. 21. Scottish bagpipers led the charge into German trenches. While the bagpipes' keening sound helped boost the morale of the British soldiers, it was their effect on the German forces that was truly astounding. These fearless pipers soon became known as Die Damen aus der Hölle, or Ladies from Hell, among enemy lines. 22. Musicians on the First World War battlefields endured significant losses at the hands of German soldiers. The pipers couldn't defend themselves on the front lines as they marched into battle with only their musical instruments. If one was gunned down, another just took their place, and the music continued. Of the 2,500 pipers mobilized for the war, about 500 were killed and 600 injured. 23. World War I marked the dawn of aerial warfare. When the war began, planes were only used for aerial surveillance. Later, it got other uses in combat, like dropping grenades or other weapons over enemy territory. Eventually, they started making aircraft fitted with specialized weaponry. 24. Air traffic control was invented during the First World War. Before the First World War, once planes were in the skies, they had no way to maintain communications with the base. By 1916, the first helmets with microphones were made for fighter pilots. This great innovation was the turning point that led to the development of modern air traffic control. 25. The French used darts as a lethal weapon against their enemies in the First World War. This unusual weapon, called fléchette, was roughly 5 to 8 inches, 12 to 20 centimeters, long with a sharp pointy edge. One fléchette might not sound so bad, but French planes dropped hundreds of them at a time over German trenches.